This video is going to be about stapling and reassembling the seat after we've made the cover. The tools that I'm going to be using, I have an upholstery small hammer, I have a heat gun, I have a staple lifting tool, I have a tucking tool, a set of diagonal pliers, a staple gun that has a long nose, which is not required. You can use a short nose one. This is just the brand that I have. I have a razor blade, and I have stainless steel staples. I have the cover, of course. I have some plastic to put over the foam. I have underlining, the backing, and of course the foam. I will be putting links in the description for all of these tools if you're interested. Let's start with putting the underlining on the backing. One of the most important things when you're putting the underlining on the backing is you have to mark where the holes are for those hardware pieces that we took off in the beginning of the disassembly video. So as we're doing this, we just can't staple all the way around there. We need to, come to a point where we mark the holes where those pieces of hardware go. So now that we have this kind of pretty much tacked down, we need to make some marks. Now as I'm stapling this, I'm not stapling these things right up against the edge. You want to give anywhere from 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch in to put the staples. So we'll just trim this. The next step is to take some plastic, and this is just regular painter's plastic that I get at the big box store. I'll put a link in the description. We need to cover the foam with it. This aids in a little bit extra layer of protection if there's any water intrusion, to keep the water from growing mold on the foam. It also mainly allows the cover to slide easily over the foam for installation. So I have both pieces together here. And again, I'm using the Weldwood from DAP glue. And I'm going to put this on in kind of heavy lines. I don't want to have a light coating, and I don't want it to be too heavy all over the place. I just want some kind of lines that are heavy with the liquid. When it's still wet like this is when you want to put the plastic on. If you let it dry or set up, it doesn't stick to it. Now that it's applied when it's wet, it has a adhesion to it, and it'll pretty much, the solvents in there is kind of melting the plastic, and it allows it to stick. So we'll just trim around the edges. And then we're going to trim right in between the two pieces of foam. So the next thing is we want to stick the first piece of foam down. And remember when we were sewing everything together, how we sewed the plastic strip on the pull, it's going to kind of determine on which piece we put down first. So this one, we put it so that we would be stapling on the outside of this outside curve, not the inside curve. So this is a panel, this is a piece of foam that we need to stick down first. So a lot of times you can kind of flip it over and kind of align where it used to be. And we're going to make some marks over here so we know where to spray the glue, and then we can line it back up, put it on there. And again, you don't have to wait for it to tack up. You can pretty much stick this down almost immediately and get that lined up. And now we're ready to start stapling the cover. Now the first thing we got to staple down is that floating seam. And this is where that trick is, that we only added 1/2 inch to the floating seam thickness. So we measure around this way and we want to find the center. So the center of this is 13 inches. So we're going to make a mark here at 13. And we're going to go ahead and take the cover. And remember, we made marks on both sides of this floating seam. On the center, one so we could line it up with the other patterns, and this bottom one where we marked center, where we put the plastic strip, is for right here. We take this, and when I'm putting this down, I'm folding the plastic piece back so that the foam is right up against it. I don't want to have a gap between there, and I don't want to push it underneath. I want it to be right up against the foam where the edge of this plastic piece is when it's folded over. Now I'm going to put a couple of staples right here in the center. And then I'm going to work to my left and then back over to my right. And you want to make sure that that plastic piece is sitting flat right up against the foam. And that's it for getting a floating seam tensioned and pulled properly to get an even pull across the seam. So now we need to take this piece of foam and we need to glue it down. So we'll make sure that everything is sitting nicely. We'll get this put in there. Pull the cover over. And this is where that plastic really helps to get that cover to slide over the foam. We'll take a quick look to begin with, make sure we got everything positioned right, make sure everything's looking nice before we stretch it down. We don't have any seams that are out of place, nothing's looking too abnormal. So this is where on the back side of this, remember I did not sew this edge. What I usually do is, if I can, I will take the foam and cut it out of there. It gives me a nice flat surface to staple to. I don't have anything bulging up. It's kind of cumbersome to get this to pull out of here. Okay, now that I got the foam out of there, that also helps me because I'm going to heat these corners up and stretch them. If the foam is underneath there, it kind of prohibits it from stretching and looking flat. So we'll go ahead and staple this. Now they're heating the vinyl and stapling it is kind of it takes some experience to learn how to do that. It's not the easiest thing to do. All I can say is find something and practice. See this on the floating seam? We just come down 1/2 inch and it gives a nice even pull to it. And it's not wavy at all. On the back side, because we took the core out of this, it's much more flat. And it can sit down, and also when the Hitem strip goes over it, it's going to be a lot nicer. So we'll get this excess trimmed off and we'll get the Hitem strip on there. Now the way that I do my Hitem, I will leave it long in each of the corners to begin with, and I won't staple right on the end. I'll come in about 1 inch. And this is on a curved section, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be lightly pulling on the outside edge of this to get it to curve around, and stapling about every inch or inch and a half. Now the way that I finish my corners, there's a lot of different ways, and I kind of just do it a little easy. I put both of these pieces so they're overlaying each other, and I cut them both at the same time. So that way I know that they're matched to each other. And then I just put 2 staples in it like that. Okay, that is the completion of recovering a boat seat series. I will put the hardware pieces back on off camera. I don't really think they needs to be shown. Thank you everybody for following along, and we'll see you in the next video.